hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right now so you never miss an episode of Operation Truth. Send us an email, ask your questions, and very possibly we'll address your question on the air.
Operation Truth, the show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lou Palumbo. With us today, of course, is my co-host, Tom Fuentes. I remind you all, Tom is a former assistant director of the FBI. Yeah, quite a distinguished career, and he's really, I don't like to use the word fun, but he's fun to listen to. He's just so smart and well-informed, and he's an historian also. Tom and I are going to delve into this discussion about January 6th, some inconsistencies. We've spoken about it before we came on air. After being requested to preserve records and testimonies and evidences by the House, mysteriously, a lot of this information has gone missing. Reminiscent a little bit of Hillary Clinton, and I don't mean to pick on them, but there's something going wrong in the Democrat Party. We're not going to continue to beat you over the head with it. Look at your borders, your cities, your economy, the price of gasoline. This whole transition to electricity, which is just ill-conceived. No one likes this dirty word, nuclear. That's the answer. I'm going to bring Tom in right away because I want to afford Tom a significant amount more time to speak to these topics. And I just want to say one thing. One of the constructive criticisms is they spoke about my redundancy with these topics. These topics can't be spoken to enough. I need to remind you about the borders. But with all that being said, I want to bring Tom in. And Tom, thank you for joining us again today. And I want to thank your director, where you are, for your lighting and your sound. It's wonderful. That's Tom's wife. In any case, let's
pat
talk.
myself on the back for it. Thank you.
You did what, buddy?
Go ahead.
You pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. Or my wife. My wife helps me set this up. My wife, Ning.
Thank God you got somebody in your life creative, because I know this isn't you. It's too good a product for you. I'm only kidding you, Tom. Anyway, let's get into this whole thing about January 6th and the prosecution of Donald Trump and the failure to preserve records. Tom, give me some insight as to what do we have going on here?
Well, I think, you've had a complete cover-up from the beginning about what actually happened on January 6th. And part of the problem with that is that, there was so much video taken that was never released, never shown to anybody. And, a couple months ago, right before Tucker Carlson was fired or suspended or whatever by Fox News, he had been given access to many of those tapes and started using them. The so-called shaman, he was showing, that this guy was being escorted around the Capitol into the Senate chambers and down hallways by Capitol Police. And yet he was given a 4-year sentence for doing that. So then later he's out. But, the theory was that much of the video was not allowed to be released because there were so many undercover FBI and other law enforcement agents in the Capitol that their identities would be hard to conceal if all the videotapes were released. Now that was kind of a conspiracy theory, but, recently, speaking of Tucker Carlson, back at the time, for Fox, he interviewed the chief of police at the time, Stephen Sund. And then, he's suspended by Fox, and Fox never airs his interview of the chief of police. Now, finally, Tucker, now that he's doing independent, broadcast on Twitter, he re-interviews the chief, who's now no longer the chief, agrees to come in and redo the interview with Tucker. And that was on the air last week on Twitter channels. So, he basically says, that, he was under the impression there probably were, plenty of undercover agents in there. They weren't aware of it. And then he went through the whole litany of what happened leading up to the January 6th event. And then during the event, when people were entering the Capitol, and he said that, that they were offered, he wanted to be able to bring in the National Guard. He was refused. One of his bosses, when the riot actually started, was saying, well, I'll have to run that up the flagpole, something like that. And he couldn't get the authority to bring him in. So basically, the chief cited all of the problems with the security, the lack of intelligence shared with the police, the lack of cooperation from Nancy Pelosi's office and the other supervisory staff that controlled whether or not the police could have the National Guard come in, and they were refused. Now, later, when you have the January 6th commission or special hearing that was put together by Nancy Pelosi, she puts herself off limits. So here you have these, members of Congress that are going to hold these hearings. She's not allowed to even, not allowed. She prevents them from even calling her to testify, which would have been logical of what did you do? What did you know leading up to January 6th, the day before that? And, why did it take so long to authorize National Guard to come in? They weren't allowed to even ask her.
Tom, can I ask you a quick question, buddy? Now that we've impeached Trump over this unfortunate incident, which is how I want to quantify it, Nancy Pelosi can be subpoenaed. Am I correct? Just as Chief Sund.
I was just going to get into this whole thing.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
If you're a Democrat and you back, the indictment of Donald Trump for January 6th, the question there is, the idea obviously is they want to put him in prison so he's out of the picture, can't run, can't, campaign, can't do anything. But this is the classic, be careful what you ask for. Because now as a defendant, Donald Trump will have access to the discovery process, which every defendant has. And that's where you make motions and force the prosecution to provide the evidence that they used to go after you. And they have to provide that, whether they want to or not. So now Donald Trump can request all of these records that we don't know. Now, the committee, Pelosi's committee, apparently has destroyed the records. Imagine that. So you won't have access to that stuff. But as far as Pelosi herself, there's no protection for her to keep her from testifying. If Donald Trump subpoenas her and wants her in, and her staff and the other leadership of the House and Senate on January 6th, what they knew, what they didn't know, what the FBI gave them in terms of intelligence, so that they could anticipate the need for having National Guard present. All of that's going to become available. So I think they're going to come to be very sorry that they went after Trump this time on this particular indictment because of what he's going to be able to open up for his own defense. That's one thing. And the second thing is, when these motions start going, they're very time consuming. So the idea that you're going to have a trial date set for 14, 15 months from now, January 2024, that's not going to happen. They'll be lucky if this thing is in trial before January 2025 or even 26. These trials take a long time when you're looking at discovery because they're going to be claiming, oh, we can't give you this, we can't give you that because it's classified. So that's going to even prolong it further hearings, further discussions, probably going to the courts a couple of times. So the idea in this case, they think they've got Trump, they indicted him. I think they better wake up and realize that they've awakened a sleeping tiger.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that as they continue to pursue him, his following increases. And I think a lot of people are so outraged by this that in defiance, they're going to vote for him. What's so interesting, Tom, is that they're chasing Donald Trump, right? They need to take a look at Joe Biden. I'd like you to get a little bit into this convoluted relationship between Biden and Zelensky in the Ukraine. And I do just want to remind our listeners that we've already, the House Republicans have uncovered the fact that they've taken substantial amounts of money, in totality, $20 million from 5 different entities, some of whom are our adversaries, like China and Russia. Not to mention, we're taking money from a country and a company in that country accused of corruption. Tom, you want to elaborate a little further for me on this, buddy?
Well, Lou, I spoke last week on the podcast that Biden has been completely compromised in this thing. He's accepted all of this bribery money. They've documented at least $21 million now going to the Biden family. But because of all that's why corruption is so heinous of a crime, because he accepts this money and they basically own him. He's compromised. So now in the past almost 2 years now, anything Zelensky asks for, he pretty much gets. We've sent hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. And as a result of that, and again, Zelensky and Biden like to model themselves after each other. So Zelensky gets all this illicit cash that was supposed to go to support his government. And suddenly he has 3 luxury homes, in South Florida, in Venice, Italy, on the Mediterranean. So he's become a very rich man personally, and that's U.S. taxpayer money that has gone to that. Then you have all of the weaponry he's asked for, and we've sent, to the point of depleting our own supply of 155 millimeter artillery shells. And that stuff's showing up all over the place on the black market. Some of the shoulder fired weapons, we see pictures of Mexican cartel members carrying those weapons around in Mexico that we sent to the Ukraine. So somewhere along the line, Ukrainian generals or other officials in that country have been selling the stuff that we sent them to fight against Russia on the black market in Africa, Mexico, Middle East, other countries. So, so that's another factor. So basically, Biden seems to be beholden. Now you have the latest thing. We have this tremendous disaster in Hawaii. So they put together an aid package for Hawaii. Oh, by the way, they put in $25 billion for the Ukraine hidden in the Hawaii aid package. This was just last week. So now we're sending another huge package to Ukraine. This time we're trying to disguise it. So everybody, takes a look at this and says, oh, gee, why are we giving Ukraine all of this stuff? And it's going down the drain. It's ending up on the black market, all of that, which is becoming a famous tale in the Biden administration. $86 billion worth of equipment left in Afghanistan ends up on the black market. Now we have billions of dollars worth of equipment we've sent to Ukraine on the black market, to the point where even Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson 2 weeks ago, says we've depleted our supply of 150 millimeter shells, 155 millimeter shells. And so therefore, we're going to go ahead and use cluster munitions, which have been almost banned by every country in the world because they're so devastating and so dangerous to the civilian population when you use them. So you have all of these factors where it just looks like, Biden has to be in their pocket to be going along and doing all of these things that he's doing. And especially now, when you have more and more military advisors saying that Ukraine has no chance of defeating Russia. That was our goal. We're going to weaken Russia, and we're going to take over Russia, and we're going to impose regime change and take out, Putin, and all of these things, none of which did happen or are likely to happen in the future.
Yeah, Tom, we're going to take a quick break, but you struck on an interesting point about this exercise of this country to kind of degrade Russia's capabilities. We're going to take a quick break, guys. Listening to Tom Fuentes, former assistant director of the FBI. We're going to be right back. I do encourage you to become part of this conversation. I want to thank our listeners and those who are communicating with us already. You can email us at operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. Again, that's operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. We'll be right back.
The world is in crisis, with political unrest and financially unstable countries trying to print their way to prosperity by taking on trillions of dollars of new debt. It's incredibly concerning. That's why you need to own silver as a hedge. So call today to receive the free hard asset information kit on how easy it is to own silver. Green energy demands will possibly turbocharge silver prices to 50, 100, even 300 an ounce, according to many experts around the world. Silver is a proven hedge against inflation. Since 1971, silver has returned over 11% when averaged yearly. Silver is a proven wealth preservation for hundreds of years. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Fuentes is still with us. We've been having a discussion about convoluted relationships. To put it to you politely, my concern is, when is the American public going to wake up and see what's going on in your country? This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with a subversive exercise. I'm beginning to be concerned that the Democrats hate this country because there are so many areas that they are deficient in. And I mentioned them to you: borders, cities, economy. Our foreign policy just was openly criticized by the State Department, focusing on this withdrawal from Afghanistan. Tom, give me a little insight on this, if you would, about this withdrawal and what we're starting to learn. Supposedly misinformation. They've lied to some of the family members of the deceased 13 soldiers.
Well, during toward the end of the Trump administration, he had already initiated a lot of the withdrawal to leave Afghanistan. And you hear Trump repeatedly say that he had talked to the leader of the Taliban and showed him a picture of his house, and basically implying a threat that he better not attack U.S. soldiers. And during the last 18 months of the Trump administration, no U.S. soldiers were killed by the Taliban or anybody else in Afghanistan. But then President Biden takes office, and he decides that he imposes an artificial deadline that we got to get out right away by a certain date. And he's in such a big hurry to leave that he wants to disregard what Trump had as a policy, telling the military, you will not be the first out of Ukraine, you'll be the last. And all of our equipment that's sitting at Bagram Air Force Base. Now, I've been there. Bagram is about maybe a 1-hour drive from Kabul, the capital, and you go through the mountains on 2-lane roads that have mines on both sides with flags on the shoulders and all of that. But when you get to Bagram, it's one of the largest air bases in the world, designed for our large aircraft to be able to come and go from there at will. And strategically, it's very close to China and close to China's nuclear manufacturing facilities. So Bagram was a very strategic, not just for taking equipment in and out of Bagram or in and out of Afghanistan, but its proximity to key assets of China. And President Trump tells the story that he was telling General Milley and the others at the Pentagon that we've got to get that stuff out, get our aircraft out of there, fly them to nearby allied countries, get our equipment out. And that they argued with him, oh, that's too big of a deal, we can't do that. And then later, when Biden's in a hurry, so he doesn't want to hear any of this, oh, we got to get equipment out. They're free to do what they want once President Trump is gone. And free to do what they want means abandon that stuff at Bagram into the hands of the Taliban, making the Taliban one of the best equipped militaries in the world with our equipment. Now then, they decide that, okay, we're going to fly our people in and out of Kabul airport, it's just a tiny in-the-city airport. It's not the size of Bagram. So we start evacuating, and you hear President Biden repeatedly say, we're not going to do like Vietnam. We're not going to have helicopters flying off the embassy with people hanging onto the bottom to be rescued, like happened in April of 1975 when we leave Saigon. The helicopters are taking refugees, basically, Vietnamese people that helped us, to the nearby ships and dropping them off until they just couldn't do it anymore. So that Biden says, we're not going to have that happen. Well, that's exactly what we have happen. In fact, we have people hanging onto the aircraft as they're taking off from Kabul airport. So everything that was supposed to be in place for the Afghan withdrawal was ignored. And Biden just decided, we're getting out, we're leaving the stuff, we don't care. And you end up with, a riot in Kabul and 13 American service members killed in the mayhem there. So here you have the last 18 months under President Trump, nobody's killed. And now you have 13, in a matter of, the final days of while we're there.
What's interesting about this discussion, Tom, and Donald Trump, I have my issues with him. It has to do with bedside manner, decorum. There is so much hate and animosity for this man that we're prepared to destroy our country to prevent him from becoming a leader. And I have to be honest, I don't think neither he nor Joe Biden should be leading this country. We need to introduce, I would say, a different demographic, starting age-wise. And interestingly enough, Tom, I spoke with Brian Williams, our guru of this show, and he said that we had been censored in some way by Google because I allegedly made some form of a political statement. What they were referencing was the following. I said, maybe we need a demographic based on chronology to step away. Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, the Clintons. It wasn't politically driven. It has to do with what I perceive to be a demographic of people that are in a complete disconnect from this country in a very general sense, and most importantly, from our young people. But we're apparently in an exchange, courtesy of Brian, to address this with Google. You know, that's all the behind the scenes things. I don't insinuate myself into areas that I'm not completely literate. Tom, I want to, we have about 10 minutes, but I want to ask you about this special counsel that was appointed by Merrick Garland to oversee this Hunter Biden investigation. And I'm going to let you explain it, Tom, because you know his history with 5 years to charge for 2 misdemeanors for millions of dollars of income tax evasion. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, before we go to that, I'd like to get back to the issue of Google, who owns YouTube, trying to censor the channel and all that. Now, last week, I made no bones about it, that President Biden is corrupt and that corruption has led to the policies we have, not just in the Ukraine, but softening investigations against China and other activities. So, meantime, yesterday on Maria Bartiromo's show on Fox News, she interviews Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, who emphatically says that Joe Biden is corrupt and that this corruption is why we're doing what we're doing in the Ukraine and sending money, down the drain there in cash and equipment and you name it. He makes no bones about it. But of course, that's on a cable news network channel where he said that. But he basically said everything I said last week concerning Joe Biden and the relationship with Zelensky and the Ukraine and the drain of resources going from our country to Ukraine. So that's on that issue. I wanted to get that out, that just went out on cable news yesterday.
And that's a very important point you just made, Tom. It's such a sad state of affairs that we're involved in a conversation where we're even throwing the word bribery around in regards to our president or any elected official. But, the deal is this, ladies and gentlemen, what you're hearing from myself and you're hearing from Tom, we would be equally open and critical if these were Republicans. The reality of it is they're not. They're Democrats. It's not like the Republicans haven't had their rub with trouble. Look at Richard Nixon. I don't really care who's leading this charge because whomever is doing it is impacting the future of our young people. So I'm going to take a quick break.
Lou, you don't have to go as far back as Nixon. Look at during George W. Bush administration, allegations are made that the vice president, Dick Cheney, and his assistant, Scooter Libby, leaked the identity of a CIA case officer, Valerie Plame, which was illegal. And here you have a Republican administration, the number 2 person in that administration, accusations made like that, and a special prosecutor is appointed to look into it. The prosecutor is U.S. Attorney Fitzgerald in Chicago, Northern District of Illinois, and about 40 FBI agents are assigned to work with him. And that results in the conviction of Scooter Libby for the outing. And Libby then screams bloody murder. I'm not going to jail. You can't put me in jail. I'm never going to go to jail. So George W. Bush doesn't pardon him. He gives him, clemency, lets him out of jail. Meantime, the vice president, pretty much, that ruins their relationship between him and the President Bush. They almost never speak to each other again because he wanted the pardon issued. That would restore his law license. That would restore him to, full citizenship, basically. And President Bush only commuted the sentence. So all he basically said is, you're still a guilty felon. You're still disbarred, but I'll keep you from going to jail. And then that ended the case. Fitzgerald, a former organized crime prosecutor from Brooklyn, New York, basically realized that's it. They lost any chance of leverage using Scooter Libby to get Dick Cheney. Now that's during a Republican administration and a Republican president and a Republican attorney general appointing special counsel to go after the vice president. You don't have that today. You have all of these allegations with Joe Biden and all of these other officials, nothing.
Yeah, Tom, we're going to take a quick break. I'm glad I brought that up and you had an opportunity to elaborate on that. That was very, very good point that you made. And I'd actually forgotten that about Scooter Libby and Dick Cheney. Guys, stay with us. We're going to come right back.
Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Fuentes is with us. If you're listening, you're hearing some very interesting information and truth-driven and not politically attached, by the way, as I said numerous times, and I'm going to continue to say it to remind everyone that listens, we would be saying the same thing if these were Republicans. They happen to be Democrats. And I overlooked this episode, this incident with Dick Cheney and outing Valerie Plame, and Tom spoke to it rather intelligently, as he always does. As opposed to my having the final word for the day, I think I'm going to give it to Mr. Fuentes and let him wrap up the show. Tom, if you'd be so kind.
Well, thank you, Lou. I think it's good that we're able to finally get these points out, and especially the point you've been trying to make, that this isn't a couple of Republicans ranting and raving about the Democrats. Neither of us is a Republican. You're not a Republican. I'm not a Republican. But we are is truth seekers. Hence the name of the podcast, Operation Truth. We want the truth to come out about these issues. And we have the level of allegations and evidence that's coming out, actual financial records, not just informant information or rumors or innuendo, but actual documents showing the transfer of money that went to the Biden family, $21 million apparently from the Ukraine, more than 30 million from communist China, and people in China affiliated with their intelligence service. So you have allegations of that serious of a nature, and nobody wants to address it. Nobody wants to go after it. You started to bring up Nixon before I interrupted you in the last segment. You know, Nixon, with all of the factors that came up with the cover up of the Watergate break-in and everything, you know, finally it got so bad that a Republican Congress was going to impeach him. And you have the leader of the Senate, Barry Goldwater, and you have other senators go to the White House and tell Nixon, it's over. You need to resign. We are going to impeach you and you are going to be found guilty. Now, when's the last time we had that? That would be the equivalent today of Schumer, the Senate leader, Democrat, going to the White House and telling Joe Biden, we're going to impeach you and convict you. And of course, that's not, you have the Democrats lined up like lemmings, ready to all acquit Biden, no matter what they came up with. So that's kind of the difference we have today, is that you've spoken about the Democratic Party, and we don't want to be political. But in the United States system, our founding fathers set this up to try to avoid violent takeovers, violent revolution, violent reaction on the part of citizens groups. They set it up to that change in our government is made at the ballot box. And that's the only way it's supposed to be made if we're going to do it peacefully. And that's what's coming up now, is that you have a regime in place now in Washington that has really demonstrably hurting the United States of America.
I think we're going to wrap it today, Tom. I want to thank you for that. I remind everyone, first and foremost, we appreciate you emailing, sending us your observations, your criticisms, which we welcome, especially if they're constructive. I encourage you to become part of this conversation, because we need to garner some momentum from people living in this country that normally aren't part of the conversation. We know we're all distracted. Email us, by the way, at operationtruthofficial@gmail.com. That's going to be it for today. I thank you, Tom, as always, for your wisdom. And guys, this has been Operation Truth. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lou Palumbo, and we'll see you next week, the next episode. Thanks, guys. We encourage you to hit the subscribe button right now so you can listen to more podcasts of Operation Truth.